You're listening to the Ropes and Riffs podcast with your host, John Kiernan.
Welcome to this episode of the Ropes and Riffs podcast. This is John Kiernan, wrestling entrance theme song composer. You may remember me from such interviews as AEW's Mercedes Martinez, the one and only Marty Friedman, the one and only entrance song king Montezzi, Josiah Williams, Eric Young, and many more of your favorite musicians and wrestlers. On today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing Uncle Ben himself, Ben Eller. You may know Uncle Ben for his recent stint at his show with Mastodon. You may know him from his time on YouTube, teaching all different levels of guitar, all different shapes and sizes, and all different kinds of styles. Ben Eller is a good friend of mine, and I'm so excited that he was able to come on the show here. So I hope you enjoy our conversation where we talk about 80s and 90s wrestling entrance themes, who some of our favorite wrestlers are, talk all about guitar. So for you guitar and music nerds out there, this is an episode for you, and so much more. If you like what you hear, think about subscribing to the show over here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and if you really like the show, feel free to leave us a comment and a review. If you leave a comment and review about the show, we'll go ahead and read it on the show. Anyone who drops a donation of $10 or more over on PayPal, ROPES, the letter N, RIFFS. That's Ropes and Riffs. You'll also get a shout out on the show. I've kept you waiting long enough, so enjoy this episode and a great conversation with the one and only Uncle Ben, Ben Eller. Uncle Ben, how you doing today, Ben Eller?
Hey, kids, it's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. Thanks so much for having me on the show, dude. I feel like we've been trying to line this up for a long time. We've had schemes and plots working against us. The guitar Illuminati, the Guitar Minati, infiltrated Knoxville last week and set up a power surge for my studio that destroyed a bunch of stuff. They were trying to shut us down, but look at us now. Here we are.
Look at us. Who'd have thought? Look at us. But I like how we talk about all that, and then you're just like, oh, yeah, a week or two ago, sorry I couldn't do it. I was just with Mastodon. That's a thing.
That old thing. I don't know if you saw that or not, but, just doing stuff. Had a gig. I had a show.
Dude, it was so cool. I was looking up, obviously they're like, oh, Ben's playing with Mastodon. It's like, oh my God. And I think the actual first time that I heard that you were doing it was through Metal Sucks. And it was like, right. Oh, look at this. And it's just like, wait, Ben Eller. Of course, it's that Ben Eller. But you're always just like, is it that Ben Eller? And then it shows up, it's you. And you're just ripping on stage with them, man. It was so cool to see. So congrats to that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And it was really a dream gig and an ultimate honor because I've been obsessed with that band for so long. So it was a pretty surreal experience. And dude, I'll tell you this, it was so fun being there, like on the scene, watching stuff unfold, right? Because basically the announcement of Brent's departure happened like after we touched wheels in the Dominican Republic. Like right as the plane landed, I opened up my phone and it's like, oh, there's the news, And I had all my friends and stuff texting me. It's like, dude, did you see that Brent's out of the band? Did you see Brent left the band? Holy shit, who do you think they're going to get to replace him? Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy, And then it was like I think it was like the next day, because we played the last day of the fest. The next day, people were sending me all this speculation. And then like the next day after that, I guess somebody on the beach spotted me at soundcheck because the stage was like right on the beach. And so we were doing sound check early in the morning and like a couple people lined up on the beach, and we're taking photos and stuff. And it kind of got leaked. It's like possible Ben Eller sighting at Tool in the Sand. It was just really cool watching the breadcrumbs get dropped. And then it's like, boom, there it is.
It sounds like such things that happen in wrestling where it's like, oh, this person signed, and then the dirt sheets have it for a while. And they're like, oh, they're backstage at Raw or AEW. Oh, they didn't show up today. Oh, they were backstage, but nothing happened. And then all of a sudden they show up and you're like, what happened? This is crazy.
I'm telling you, man. And like the sleuth work of the internet is truly incredible. Those are some Carmen Sandiego kids out there for sure.
And I like, too, how you had to kind of play it coy. Oh, my God, this happened. And especially for you, too, with all the videos you've done a lot on Mastodon, too, through the years about like playing this riff and playing this riff. And, you look through the internet, you search Mastodon guitar and things like that. Obviously, everyone in Mastodon over the years has just been a phenomenal player, phenomenal music. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a fan of Mastodon already. If you're not, please go check out any record in their catalog and you're going to get just some amazing music. But for you have a lot of these chops for the Mastodon stuff already, kind of even going into the gig. But the video that you did highlighting the experience, you were like, man, I only had a couple days to do it, and it was
Yeah.
literally listen to it, play through it, wait till I mess up, play through it again, get to that same spot, and then kind of dive through it. It's cool to hear about like the process of you getting into the Mastodon gig too.
Oh yeah, that's the behind the scenes stuff that nobody knows, you know? Like I saw a lot of people being like, Ben loves Mastodon. He probably knew all these songs already. I really did not. Like out of that set list, which it was a 17 song set, but I learned 20 something songs and we narrowed it down from there. I mean, I probably knew, by heart maybe 4 of them, and the rest it was just like, man, frantically learn this stuff as fast as you can, as accurate as you can. And it was a real challenge, man. Thankfully, I had earlier that year done the Shiprocked gig, right? Me and Andy Wood and our drummer Andy Campbell, we do these crazy rock cruise gigs and all that where we're sort of the core of the house band of the main event, which is called the Stowaways, which is kind of this all-star jam band kind of thing where we choose different members of different bands that are on the cruise, and we all do like a one-time only cover song together, and then the next song is a different lineup, then the next song is a different lineup. It's a ton of fun. It's one of the most cool things I get to do every year. But it involves learning, 50, 60 songs, which I had just done on guitar and bass to make sure it was all covered in case somebody had to cancel or whatever. So I had just been, doing this marathon cram session anyway. So I think my brain was already kind of in that mode of, transcribing, learning, memorizing. Because you know how it is, man. You're a player too. It's like if you don't use those muscles, they atrophy. I don't know if you've gone like a long time between gigs and learning material and memorizing it, but man, if you've not done it, like I remember coming out of COVID, right? When we had no gigs. Some of those first gigs I had coming back, dude, it took a while to dust it off, to get those memorization chops back and those transcription chops back.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
thankfully I'd kind of already been in that sort of, cram for material mode because of Shiprocked. So then when that fell in my lap, it's like, okay, I'm ready.
Now, here's a question for you too, because obviously you've learned lots of Mastodon over the years. There were songs that you didn't know. When it comes to the songs that you did know, I know a lot of bands that when you do sessions for them, when I've done sessions for them, it's like, okay, cool. Well, here's how it's really played as opposed to the way that you kind of heard it. The thing that's always been great about you is how so guitar centric you are. Like, watch any of your videos, hear any of the ways that you talk. You're really as dialed in, I think, as possible to
Thank you.
everything from what string you're using. And even if you're just like, there's a fingering that you wouldn't usually think to use because you could just do it this way. He probably did it this way or she did it this way because that's the way that you hear it on the record. For you, when you go into Mastodon and you're playing things the way that you learn them, is there a conversation with them like, hey, this is like really close, but here's that extra like 1% to make it as accurate as possible? Or were you pretty
Absolutely.
much like you had that conversation too?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I want to make sure I'm doing this stuff as accurately as possible because that's what the fans are there to see. And especially for that time period with the band, coming out of this relationship they had with Brent Hines, who is a legend, one of my favorite players, one of the most important players in metal of the past 20 something years, right? That's a big leap of faith for the fans to be like, how is the band going to carry on with somebody else, whoever it may be? So I kind of felt a responsibility myself to be like, don't worry, whoever steps up is still going to play this stuff accurately. The songs are going to sound the way that you're familiar with. Well, a little different, obviously. I'm not Brent. Nobody is. So it was important for me to put the faith in the fans, to restore faith in the fans, and also to pay respect to the music. Because to me, this is music I've been a fan of for 20 something years now. And so for me, it was very important to honor the material.
And you're talking about so many records too. Like
Yeah.
Mastodon's a band that record to record, you can tell it's Mastodon, but you can hear a definite difference between like March of the Fire Ants, Colony of Birchmen, and everything in between and after. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, there are some bands where you're like, all right, cool. This is this. I get this. This guitarist always does this. And this is kind of the style that they do. I'm like, for me, I'll listen to an August Burns Red record. I listen to all of my love August Burns Red, but you listen to August Burns Red and you're like, hey, if you liked Constellations or you liked all of these other ones, you're probably going to feel pretty similar on all of them. That's not a dig. That's just, hey, some bands have that. Other bands go, hey, we want to have different things that we do on different records. So for you, you're kind of not even learning like one band. You're learning different years of the
Wow.
band. And almost it feels like you're learning different styles altogether, I'm sure.
No, you're exactly right. And that's a great way to look at it. It's like it really is like learning different eras, of the same band. And the cool thing with that group too is, everybody writes in that group. So the songs that Brent wrote feel different under your hands than the songs that Bill wrote. And people don't even know in that band how much stuff Braun, the drummer, writes. He writes a lot of stuff, and his riffs feel nothing like Brent's riffs or Bill's riffs or Troy's riffs. So it is really interesting and it's really fun. But that's part of why I like the challenge so much, is because it isn't that I already know exactly how this is going to lay out on the neck. I know how this is going to go. It's always something different that keeps you at attention. That's something I've always really enjoyed about that band. Yeah. And yeah, you're right, man. All those little things like making sure you're playing stuff on the right string set. Is this an open string or a fretted note? All that stuff really matters to me. So I really like digging into the minutia there.
And I love that too. I love how much of a focus you have to it. And, knowing you for as long as we've been friends here and as
Long
long as
time.
we've been, yeah, it's crazy. I can't even put a finger on it, but I know it was like, I think NAM 15 that we had gone to,
Sounds
and it
right.
was like right before then. Yeah, it's super cool.
Whoa, that's
And
like 10 years ago now.
something like
What?
that. Isn't it crazy? Our hair and our faces are still pretty good,
I think
I'd
we're doing
say.
great. I mean, look at those locks, dude. We still got it. We still
I
got it.
love I love it. And through that time, obviously, there's been the constant conversations of guitar, constant conversations of all different styles. You basically going, hey, man, check out Brad Paisley. And me being like, this is a nightmare to play. I love this. This is
Yeah.
crazy. All the way into, talking about some of the wrestling stuff too, as we are ropes and riffs. We got to talk about wrestling. And, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
for me, the times that I had really heard you talk about wrestling were on, Dead and Lovely with you and Hollywood Steve talking all the horror stuff on the podcast that you were
Yeah.
doing. And it was like, you guys would always drop the references to the older stuff, which you got to talk about. And I always loved the fact of like, someone like me who's still so like about what products are out now and being like, oh my God, cool, this and that. Like, hey, guys, remember Penta had Tool's Adam Jones do the recent theme, which is
Yeah, you
super
told me
cool.
about that.
But
Crazy.
yeah, and we got to dive into that a little bit too, because that's some crazy stuff. But just being able to like hear you guys talking all the way about like wrestling from the '80s, and it sounds like from when you were younger, you were really into wrestling much earlier in your life too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you're right, man. Me and old Hollywood Steve back in the Dead and Lovely days would wax poetic about old school wrestling stuff all the time because, we both grew up here in the South and East Tennessee, and you really can't get away from wrestling. Now back then, in the late '80s, early '90s, it was still a little bit more niche. Once we hit kind of the Attitude Era and everything really blew up, it became a lot more common. But back in the day, it was still a little bit more niche. But being in the South, you couldn't get away from it. Smoky Mountain Wrestling had a huge presence here, so you'd see all the Smoky Mountain flyers everywhere. And yeah, I don't know, it's just good old boy stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. Southern. I don't think people realize how much resonance wrestling has in the South,
Oh yeah.
and it's one of those things where you have so many of like the biggest talents that would do all the territories down there, and you're talking about. I mean, in New York, obviously, you had, WWF and WWF and things like that. But like the South, I think, is always really where wrestling will have that stronghold. That's still real to me, that whole thing. It's like,
Oh yeah, dude.
a lot of the best guys came from down there too. And, Dusty down in Georgia and all that kind of stuff. It's so interesting to think about when you're in the States because you think about wrestling overseas and things like that. But you really think about the stronghold of wrestling being such a Southern thing. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, it's absolutely everywhere. Those are our stories, man. Those are our male redneck soap operas.
What's your early wrestling story? Like what had gotten you into it when you were younger?
Dude, I don't even know the first time that I started getting into it, honestly. And that's actually something I hadn't thought about. Like, what was the first time you watched wrestling? It was one of those things that I just always had. It's kind of like I don't really remember the first time I heard Van Halen. It's like I've always had Van Halen in my life. And wrestling is the same way, man. Dang, that's a good question because I'm trying to think about it this way, man. So I grew up, funny enough, on a street called Harmony Circle. Pretty cool.
There you go.
And down the street was my best buddy and lifelong friend, Josh. He lived right down the street from me. And him and his brother, who's his older brother, Brian, were always really into wrestling. So maybe we got into it hanging around them because my parents didn't watch wrestling. So maybe they got us into it, maybe watching it over at their place or something. But again, I don't even remember when that was. So it would have been early, early, early on. And man, we just used to love watching that stuff. And I don't know, to me, it was like watching real life superheroes. That was the appeal to me. I was always into comic books and everything growing up. And so to see these guys, these big, hulking dudes with these crazy physiques and costumes, and they had their super moves, and they had this like, mythology. Like when you see characters like The Undertaker when you're a kid, and you're like, okay, I know that this is pretend and he's acting, but like this is the closest thing to seeing a real superhero I've ever seen. Like this guy is beyond human. So I think that's what got me into it early on. Yeah. The
Yeah,
pageantry.
100%. Yeah. And, I ask that question sometimes to people, like, what was your first memory of wrestling? And, like, I'll always go back to Brett and Shawn WrestleMania 12, but I don't even think that was my first time. But like that's the one that I always say, oh, really got me into wrestling. Everyone's like, if for people listening, you guys know the match, a 60-minute Iron Man match, and everyone's like, why are you gonna put these two in there for 60 minutes? And then it goes to a draw, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we're back. And then Shawn goes, surprise, fuck face, and hits you with a super kick. And it's like that's it. All of a sudden Shawn's there. I'm always a Shawn guy. And
Dude,
it's just like,
Shawn, man, yes.
yeah. Oh, he's so good. And there's like I think that was my first match was Shawn Brett WrestleMania 12, but same thing. Like you feel like it's been in your life forever. I know my parents were huge into it, and then over the years, like my mom was really big into it too, with like SmackDown when it came on when we lived in Queens, and we would just like eat Ben and Jerry's Bovinity Divinity ice cream, watching it on UPN.
Amazing.
That's a throwback, ladies and gentlemen. UPN for those in the north.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
that's like I remember those things, and she's watching like The Rock get super kicked by Shawn Michaels as a referee in the short shorts, and I'm like, oh my god.
Amazing.
And my mom was somebody who was very much like, I think she helped me suspend my disbelief for a lot longer because
Yeah.
she was like, oh my god, if someone got kicked like that, yeah, they'd be out, and I'm like, yeah,
They would be.
yeah. And then there
Oh,
was always like that little glimmer of like, the Undertaker. Yeah, I thought he was dead for a while.
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, he was.
totally. Oh, man. That's funny you mentioned Shawn Michaels too, because like, that was always the raging question back in the day. I was like, "Okay, Brett or Shawn, which side are you on?" And I remember as a kid, I always liked the face. I liked Bret Hart. I liked him going out there and giving his really, crappy sunglasses to the kids. Remember he'd give the kids it was like a piece of foil shaped into sunglasses, like, "Here you go, kid." But I always thought that he was like the good guy, and Shawn was like the bad guy. Nowadays, I'm just like, no, Shawn all the way, dude. What a performer. So much charisma, so much crowd control, and so much consistency. Like a friend of mine showed me a compilation of all of his like, elbow drops over the years. It was just a compilation of elbow drop, elbow drop, elbow drop. They're identical. It's like his muscle memory is spot on. They all look exactly the same because he's so dialed in as a performer. And dude, actually, okay, here's one of my first wrestling memories. I can't say the first, but one of my first. You'll think this is hilarious. So remember, of course, Shawn Michaels' theme song.
But yeah.
Absolutely part of the charisma. Singing your own theme song about how you're a sexy boy. Awesome. Holy cow. You can't get any cooler than that, right? But whenever the song starts and Shawn's walking out, there's a lady and she goes, Shawn, she's making sexy noises. That was my sexy noise, by the way. But dude, as like, like a 5-year-old kid, I didn't understand that was like sexy woman noises. I thought that was the sound of him like murdering a woman because he's a bad guy.
Imagine that changes the whole context of everything
It
Shawn
really
Michaels. I'm
does.
gonna murder somebody, then I'm gonna walk to the ring.
He's a real lady killer, really. It just confused me so much as a kid. I was like, wow, this guy's really a bad guy. His theme song starts off with him murdering a woman, then singing about how hot he is. This guy's messed up.
You want to know something crazy though? Actually, and this is something I thought for years too. Actually, up until last year, I forget where it was and I forget where I heard it, which is a great way to qualify anything I'm about to say, ladies and gentlemen. But I believe that the vocals at the beginning, everyone thought was Sherry, right? Sherry
Right.
Martel,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's actually Jimmy Hart.
No, it's not.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
Oh. Okay, that adds an extra layer of confusion. Now I'm just as confused now as a 40-year-old dude than I was when I was 5.
See, when I heard that, and it was on like one of these like legit sources, like someone who knew or whatever, like in the industry, and I was just like, man, this is like some Berenstein Bears kind of stuff going back and forth. Like, no, this is Mandela effect. This is like, it totally was her. It has to be.
Has to be.
Otherwise, 36 years of my life means nothing. Or, I don't know, someone squashed a bug in like the 80s and then went back in time and never squashed that bug, and now Jimmy Hart did it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I have this conversation with people who do the entrance themes nowadays too, because they're like, man, what do you think about like the themes now, and like what you do and what like Mikey from AEW does and all this? And I'm always like, man, it takes a lot to write a really memorable theme. But I think the thing that a lot of people don't reckon, well, let me talk about Brett's first. The thing that's cool with Brett's is now, Natalia uses a version of it, his related in the industry and whatnot. And it's just like, it's cool to see that. But I go, man, back in the day, you didn't have lots of companies. You didn't have a lot of the same dynamics. So you got the opportunity for those themes to really stick in your head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think you're going to get back there again. Like, I think that you can make music, obviously, that's really unique for each person. But kind of like you said, Bret Hart's theme, it's kind of
That's
and
it.
then
Yep.
yeah, and then it's just like, and then some like kind of cool solo that happens. It's cool, but like I always think about it, and I asked Jim Johnson this on LinkedIn because we had a conversation. Jim Johnson, composer for WWE, old WWF, right, who wrote that, and he's like, "Man, when you write themes, you got to think about like who the talent is and things. Like, think about the
Yes.
Undertaker." I go, but yeah, no disrespect, the Undertaker's a dead guy, right? You could write a funeral dirge, totally cool. Nowadays, you may write something heavy too, but I go, what about Brett? How do you like write Canadian? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? How
Right?
do you write for a technical person? And for that, he was always like, you got to think of like the story of the person. You
Yeah.
got to think about like everybody's got a unique story. And I always agree with that. They do. But it's just like, I don't know how you get inside the mind of like a Bret Hart and come up with something like that. That theme is always iconic.
Dude, I was gonna ask you about this because you've done a lot of this kind of work, and I've always thought that it sounded so fun because I don't know about you, man. Like I get the total fear of a blank page, right? When I don't have an assignment and it's like, I don't know, do something, be creative, write something, anything. It's a blank page. Like I kind of just spiral at that point. But when the assignment gets tighter and tighter, like for doing sessions that I've done over the years or whatever, where it's like, okay, I need a 30-second long guitar solo in this key at this tempo, my brain starts firing off ideas right away. The limitation is what makes it interesting to me. And I imagine when you're writing a theme for a wrestler, as you've done, it's got to be really, I don't know, I would see my own brain getting very excited about that, being like, okay, it needs to be this long, it needs to convey this energy, it's for this character, he looks like this, his story is this. I would get really excited doing that. What is that process like for you?
Yeah, it's exactly like you said.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, and as I think we're both in kind of that guitar space too. You think about all the phenomenal players. It's like, well, okay, you think about like a Jack Gardner, you think about all these guys, and you go, okay, great, that record you played every single note. What's next?
What's next?
And
Yeah.
it's just like it's this blank canvas of you can play all the things, you can do all the things. You've literally hit every chord tone. You've literally hit every non-chord tone. You did every passing that you could have done. What's the next record going to sound like? It becomes daunting when you do themes for wrestlers. I feel like it's been honestly some, like you said, kind of some of the most freeing to do because you
Yeah.
talk to a talent and you're like, what's your story? What do you want your theme to tell the people about you before we hit the ring? And tell me a bit about you. And it becomes this thing where, and I forget, you basically said it, right? With limitations comes freedom. Because if you can do everything, then you have this paralysis. If you know,
Yes.
okay, you're going to be doing this kind of thing, then it helps tighten that up a little bit. And it helps you get even more creative outside of that, right? If you're working on a theme for a talent who's, let's say, more of a horror gimmick or more of like a scary theme, okay, cool. You could choose this scale to work in. Cool, maybe you can choose this kind of more exotic scale to write in instead. And it's like, wow, that makes them a little bit more unique. Why did you choose that? Because this person sounds very much from the underworld. This person is a cult leader. This
Yeah,
person,
exactly.
it gives you those kind of like extra tools, and it makes it like you get to feel like each piece that you write does have its own identity, because every wrestler then has their own identity too. So
Right.
yeah, I think you're 100% spot on with that. Yeah.
The constraint, it's like within the constraint lies the freedom. It's really interesting because if you just had somebody come to you and they're just like, write me a theme, you'd be like, okay, what, anything? Yeah, anything. I
Yeah.
would probably never get anything done if that was the case. But you're right. If it was like, hey, I'm a supernatural luchador and I'm a high flyer, high impact wrestler, or whatever, I would start getting ideas right away. I always find that something that I've showed my students and stuff over the years too. People that are having trouble getting creative, getting songs finished. It's usually because they're giving themselves the biggest blank page in the world. But when you give yourself that assignment of like, it has to be this long, it has to convey this emotion, it has to be in this key, it has to be, you know what I mean? The more limitations you give, usually the more ideas you'll actually get.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think in that way too. Like the more they write music and the more, when you're a beginner in that stage, you're not thinking like that. You're just like, and I always use this terminology, back in the day, you had Led Zeppelin coming out with a small orchestra and there was smoke, and there was Jimmy Page coming out with all the letters and, crazy shapes on his pants. And Robert Plant came out with his shirt open, and
Oh,
all of a sudden
yeah.
he's singing into the microphone and he just sounds like he's singing to a hall of people. And
Cool
it's just
guy's
like,
own.
yeah, how do they come up with all this stuff? And I'm like, I love Zeppelin, I do, but at the same time, you could call it reverb on the voice, you could call it, he's using these scales, he's doing this, and it's not absolutely to make any of that sound bad. It's just, these are the tools that they're using, and it's okay to know that. So then when you turn around and you have a student that's like, oh, I can't do this, you're like, all right, let's focus up a little bit. I just had the rock band we do at our school did that. We were like, all right, we've learned all these songs. Let's write a piece of music.
Yeah, man.
And I did start it off a little bit open. I'm like, all right, cool. Does anyone have anything? And they all kind of look at each other like, what are we doing? I'm like, all right, cool. What are we feeling now? What's our vibe? And they're like, oh, a little bit more calm and this. I'm like, all right, cool. What are some songs that you think of that are kind of calm? Okay, this. And we listened to like 3 or 4. And I'm like, the 2 that you really liked the most were in this time signature.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's do that. And so think of that. And let's choose a key, right? You're starting to put these pieces in place for people that might not have written before. And
Right.
they wrote this super cool song. And I'm like, man, like the band is literally just like, oh, I feel this is something you could listen to on the radio. I'm like, that's it. Like that. Yeah. And then guess what? You can write another song that sounds a lot more lively and is a little bit more like, fast. Like you can do those things, but now you have this way to define more of what you're looking to do. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely so. That's got to be a real thrill seeing that. And I've always loved doing that with younger students and stuff too. That thrill of seeing them be like, "Oh my god, I can write music." It's a thrill whenever that clicks with.
Yeah, and you've worked with hundreds of students too. You have so many students that you've worked with, and for you, it's like it's not just compositions, but it's breaking through those guitar things. It's being
Oh
able
yeah,
to
totally.
like, and that's one thing that I think is often understated. And actually, as an instructor, I've learned a lot from you too,
Thank
watching
you.
the way that you teach and explain things. It's like you dial in so much on the minutia, right? But you focus so much on the things that people are doing right. But you're like, hey, here's the thing you're not considering. For those who don't know, Troy Grady and
Right.
Ben Eller are the people that have defined the pickslanting conversation over the last couple of years. And if you don't know what pickslanting is and you're a guitarist listening to this, check out all of the videos that Troy Grady and Ben have done, because it's like it really makes just an unbelievable difference. If you don't know what it is, it's basically take your guitar playing from I'm stuck to playing anything. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy, man. Yeah, the Troy stuff, man, I always have to give credit to, I didn't discover anything that Troy didn't, I just take what Troy showed me and I try to phrase it in my own words and see if it clicks with people. Troy really did change everything for the world of technical guitar playing for sure.
Yeah. And it's so cool to have like those little dissects there, right? Like just how quick you dive on a technique. And, when we think about the amount of people that you've played for, the amount of work that you've done, and just in general, there's so much that has like Ben Eller attached to it, and it's so funny too, because like, we worked on one theme a while ago for Bruce Rogers. I was like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
man, let's go ahead and have Ben on here. And it's
Was that
just
like
like,
2020? Was that during COVID time? I think it
something like
was.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
at least 2 to 3 years ago. And it's still one of my favorite themes that I've done, because again, I like doing stuff that's in more of that metal vein as I like to kind of say I'm more of a metal player, but like in guitar nowadays, you basically do whatever, right? But like, I remember I got that solo back from you, and I'm like, this probably took him like 10 minutes to do. It's so good. Like, I've always
That
just
was
like,
one of
you
those. I
do the
remember the
assignment.
inspiration hit pretty fast on it. It was like, oh, I know exactly what I want to do here. I love when that happens. That those are always the best ones, whether it be solos or entire songs or whatever. I don't know about you, man, but like the ones that I toil away on for like a year at a time, those never end up being the keepers. It's always the ones where the inspiration hits hard and fast, and you just feel like you're getting this like satellite laser beam from space just sending you the information. Those are always the best ones where you don't have time to overthink.
Exactly. And they tell you that all the time. Like, don't overthink it. If it sounds good and it feels like that's what it should be, you can go back and change things later, sure. But like, usually your heart and your brain kind of know what's going on. You can overthink things until you're like dead and buried. But like, you literally, a lot of these things, the more you play, the more you write, you get in there. And I feel like when it comes to even doing some of these like entrance themes, I feel like a lot of them, when you hear these people have talked over time, whether it's CFOs from, like more modern NXT, or even Jim Johnston for the stuff that we're talking about from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, it sounds like he knew very much what he was trying to do. Like, think about like, the Stone Cold theme, like Glass Shatters. I feel like that was
Literally, I
written
was
in like
thinking
10
about that.
minutes.
Dude, I'm serious. And it's funny you mentioned that because I was exactly going the same place in my brain. And it's cool to see how a lot of those ultra memorable themes aren't even necessarily based around music. It's based around a sound. The Undertaker, the bell. That's not a song, but you hear that bell and you're like, oh, the Undertaker, the dead man's here. The glass shattering, that's Stone Cold, period. So it's funny how a lot of this stuff is more like audio design, and then the music is kind of secondary in a way.
Yeah. It is. And so that brings up the question. I know that you said Shawn Michaels and that theme, and we were talking about that earlier. Is that your favorite theme of all time, or do you have a favorite theme?
Man, that's a great question. I always have loved, I mean, and again, I'm very old school with all this stuff, so I'm sure there's a million newer ones that I'm missing out on that I don't know. I always really liked Ultimate Warrior's theme, and then it was like years later I heard Communication Breakdown by Led Zeppelin, and I'm like, wait, that's the Ultimate Warrior's riff. It's like, it's pretty much the same thing. And it just, as soon as you hear that riff, what else can you imagine other than that coked up lunatic just sprinting to the ring, dressed up like a girl bike with his tassels, right?
Yep.
I love that one. I love Razor Ramon's theme. I think Razor Ramon has a really underrated theme. It's kind of got that sort of Havana vibe to it. Really slick, like synth chords over, I think, a static bass note, if I recall. Always really liked that one a lot. Yeah, Stone Cold's, dude. I mean, that's legendary. You can't not like that one.
I feel like Razor Ramones is very underappreciated. I agree with you
Agreed.
because like that's one where it's like, okay, who's the character? And in a way, he's like smooth, but he's sleazy. And like, you think about the Ultimate Warrior. What did he do? He ran to the ring, and then when he
Printed,
was
yeah.
on the ring, he shook the ropes, and then his move was a splash where he ran against the ropes, and then he was like, it was just like so
Big
much
dumb.
speed. Yeah, just like unbelievably, like what else would it be? And you think about like Razor Ramones and like the way he walked to the ring pre Scott Hall in NWO,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
like, he was walking to the ring. He was so smooth about it. He didn't rush to the ring at all. There was no time where Scott Hall ran to the ring. He
Which is
was
pretty
just like,
funny.
all right.
Did his
Oh
theme
my
did it
God.
also start off with a noise? Wouldn't it like almost like some tropical birds? Didn't it go
I
and
forget.
then the
I
theme
know
started?
his theme. I know his theme had like some metallic sounds in it too,
Yeah.
like going throughout it. And that was kind of like, that would be like where the snare is or like the down or something like that. But yeah, I forget. I think his might have.
I think it
If it
did.
did, yeah.
I might be wrong though. I might be wrong.
There's going to be one weird one that I bring up, which a lot of people don't think about now because he wasn't really around for that long, but he helped inspire the Bray Wyatt character. His name was Waylon Mercy. And if you know like modern wrestling, Bray Wyatt's probably like one of my favorites of all
Oh yeah.
time. God rest his
Yes.
soul now.
I
But
know.
like
Crazy.
when he first kind of came onto the scene as Bray Wyatt, he had the white pants and he had the button down Hawaiian shirt. It was very much in that style of Cape Fear and very much in the style of
Yeah, man.
a wrestler that came before him named Waylon Mercy. And Waylon Mercy was kind of in that same creepy vein. Like he was in like 1995, 96. And he would come to the, I'm going to get probably the 90 something wrong, but give me a 4 year range, ladies and gentlemen. But he would, in his promos, he'd be like, when I get into that ring, you know what I mean? And like, he would be like the creepiest guy in the world, but then you'd hear his theme and like Bray Wyatt's theme was like really culty. Like Mark Crozer did a really good job on that song, but then you hear like this guy's theme, and I'll send it to you. It's not super creepy. It's one of the one-offs that I think is like maybe in wrestling history, maybe one of the ones that could have been done a little better. And again, guy comes out looking like Bray, doing all that, shaking hands, totally Southern, and then having this crazy look when he puts this guy to sleeper hold. But he's got a knife drawn onto his head. Like he'd have a little knife drawn on his head, and then the music's like ding, 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 and I'm like, I get you're trying to do that duality, but that was probably one of the only misses for me ever. But all the other ones that, and I know you didn't bring that one up, but all the other ones that you were bringing up, yeah, those are amazing. And I think just when you think about themes in general, it's like, yeah, those are the ones. Those are obviously the ones that you would go to. Macho Man's was always great. Pomp and Circumstance.
Oh yeah, man. That's like the pageantry. You know, they really rolled out the red carpet on that one.
Yeah.
I liked, and again, speaking of dearly departed, man, just lost Sabu. I always liked Sabu's theme a lot. Sabu's one of my guys. That's always been one of my dudes. Sabu's theme kind of flies under the radar, but I think it's really cool too. Kind of exotic sounding.
Rest in peace to Sabu, like you said. It's a shame. He's 60, gone too soon. But you really think about like his contributions in ECW, and ECW did so much from the music side. Like you'll hear Paul Heyman talk about it. He's like, we didn't really care about music rights. We just kind of did it.
Yeah.
Like you had Walk for what's his name? You had Walk for Rob Van Dam, which was super cool.
Yeah, RVD. That's right.
So
every now and then you get the licensed one that really pops, like how CM Punk and like Cult of Personality, right?
Yeah.
Like you hear that riff and you just think CM Punk. Like every now and then you need a licensed song to really, hook up with a wrestler's persona, and that can work too.
Yeah, he's always had great themes throughout his career. And like before that, he had Killswitch Engage's This Fire Burns.
Oh yeah,
and
that's right.
Great. Yeah. And that was so shocking when he came back because, he had that going into Money in the Bank 2011. And it was like, he's not going to leave with the belt because they're not going to let him do that. And he left with the belt and he did his thing. And then they're like, 7 days later, come back and he had Cult of Personality. And it's such an iconic theme now. And when he left, went to AEW and then was out and then came back to WWE, no one knew he was going to come. A lot of people were like, there's no way CM Punk's coming back because look at what he said. But all of a sudden, the day before it's either the day before or the day he comes back, Living Color put out a remixed version of it, like where they replayed it and re-sang it and things. And you're just like, either they got really smart PR people and they're just like, we're going to play up the fact that Survivor Series is in Chicago and he's there, or he's coming back tonight. I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. Wow, dude. That's funny. Oh, I really like, we were talking about how Shawn Michaels sang his own song.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank right now, dude. Fozzy.
Well, yeah, Chris Jericho.
Thank you, Chris Jericho. His intro music is fantastic.
Yeah. So when you talk about him, you got to talk about the WWE one, and you got to talk about the one he uses now, Judas, which is from Fozzy. Yeah, both of them are good. He's got the love of being able to have really good entrance themes over his career. And if your band can write and you're going to use one of your songs, do that one. Judas is great.
Oh yeah, double dip. Why not?
Yeah. I remember loving his WWE, WWF theme, They'll Break the Walls Down. I remember like he would stand out on the stage with the arms crossed and little 8-year-old me was like, yeah, in my room with it. That was it.
When you were a kid, who was the wrestler that you like most identified with, where you're like, I want to grow up and be that guy?
I think it was Chris Jericho. It was either Chris Jericho or The Rock. And I think it's like, for me, I'd say Shawn Michaels is probably my favorite of all time. But like, there is so much dancing that you can do in public. So you're kind of like, all right, like maybe not. But Chris Jericho, to me, he was always so funny. And I loved him in WCW too. He was so funny. He had the long hair. He was such a rocker. He would call people by the wrong names. And like, he was just so cool and charismatic. And then he had the best theme. And he was also like, back then there weren't lots of people doing like moonsaults and things like that, and he was just, I loved him. For me, I was like, man, if I could be a Chris Jericho when I grow up, I'll be me, a Chris Jericho. Yes,
that's absolutely a good choice.
And then everyone wants to either be The Rock or Stone Cold because they're just like, okay, cool, those are like the two larger than life guys, the 1A and the 1B.
Yeah.
All right.
Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Man, that's so cool. And now we talk all about like what I was sending you the other day. Adam from Tool
Yeah.
being on Penta's theme
That's
and
so
then being
cool.
on Ray Phoenix's theme.
That rules, man. It's also cool to see that, I mean, it's Adam Jones from Tool. It's like, dude doesn't have to write extra music. Guy could probably not work another day in his life and he'd be fine, you know? But he
Yeah.
still is just like, oh man, that sounds rad. I'll totally do that. That shows
And I
like
love
love for it, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, he had the picture of him on stage with the Pentagon mask, which is the guy he had done the theme for, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" And like, it's cool when you see people in media taking those little bits and being like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, I actually watch wrestling because, like you said, it's so niche, and even now that states are going, "Oh, we're gonna bring it here, and we're gonna pay to have it here," it's still niche. And I tell people this, people don't believe me, but like when I travel for work or I travel for anything, I usually tell people I do the wrestling entrance themes because, when you explain the other sides of work, it's like, all right, cool, it is what it is. But when you explain the entrance theme thing, it's just kind of a fun conversation. And the first word out of a lot of people's mouths are, oh man, yeah, like WWF, man, is The Rock still wrestling and things like that.
Right.
And you're like, it's not a dig on anyone, but it still tells you how niche of a product it is.
It's the same way with like with metal in a lot of ways, where the awareness of it from a public eye perspective is higher than it's ever been. Like more people are aware of who, Metallica is or whatever,
Yeah.
any metal band. More people
And
are
even
aware of
Spirit
it.
Box, like put someone kind of modern. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. And wrestling's the same way. Where like, yeah, people are a lot more aware of it now than they were when I was a kid. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't necessarily mean up to date and super knowledgeable about it, but the awareness is up, right?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because you don't expect then to go to a Tool show and see him wearing a Pentagon mask. Because even at that time, I think that picture was when he was in AAA or he was doing like Lucha Underground and
Oh,
things like that.
wow.
So it's like it's not one of these. Yeah, it's not like, oh, he did it in 2025 when Penta came to WWE or when he was in AEW, right? A couple of years ago. You're talking about like fairly not in the public eye kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I'll
So
leave
for
it to Adam
me,
Jones to do it before it was cool, right?
exactly, yeah. And so for me, I'm just like, man, I love the fact, and they brought it up on TV too. They were like, this was from Tool, or this was from Adam Jones from Tool. He went ahead and laid guitars over the theme, and the thing is with a lot of these companies now, they use like libraries, right? And the library track, it's cool, and then if they go, oh, we're gonna update it, or the guy's super over, we'll make something custom for him. So like. It's another one of these things. Penta comes in, he's got this cool track. It's probably from a library, but I'm just like, there's no reason for Adam Jones to have done it. And then he's on it.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it sounds so much cooler now. And it's like, why don't we get all the guys on all the tracks? Because it's that cool.
It's just better
So,
that way, right? You know what? That kind of brings an interesting thing to mind that I was going to ask you about too. Like, is there any movement within what you do of writing these themes for wrestlers? Is there any movement towards people just like ditching paying artists and using AI? Like, hey, AI, write a wrestling theme for this zombie wrestler. Is there any movement towards that?
I've had a few talents who have said that their promotional use AI because it's easier. And the thing is, when I got into doing entrance themes about 2020, I was doing a podcast with a couple buddies of mine, and we were interviewing people, and I would ask them, I go, "How do you guys get music to use?" And at that point, understand streaming wasn't as big, there wasn't as Triller fight, all these things like as prominent as they are now. And people were just like, man, we just go to the shows, we choose a song, and we hope we don't get sued, and we hope it's not used by the common person coming out after us, right?
Yeah.
So like this was really before AI started picking up. And so I was writing a lot of themes, and I'm still grateful to be writing a lot of themes. But nowadays you'll have a lot of these companies who will go, well, we're gonna stream on Triller, or we're gonna stream on, one of these apps, and even on YouTube. And so instead of us having to get something from a library, or again, wrestlers don't need to be lawyers knowing what certain things say, so like they're going to rely on whoever's given them a release to say whatever it's got to
Right.
say, right? It's probably easier for a lot of promoters to go, well, let's do something AI. The one thing I will say is, while I do know that the practice exists, and wrestlers, thank you very much for this, because y'all are great and y'all are doing the Lord's work here. I've had a lot of people come to me and be like, yeah, I had a track done by AI, but I want something done by a human. Not just by
Wow.
me, but by a human. And I'm like, that's really cool. And I can even
That
think
is
of like
cool.
three right off the bat. It's
That's kind of like the equivalent of giving you a sketch on a napkin and being like, I want this but better.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of AI. I think like there's a lot of we can talk a lot about AI. We're not going to now, but I think that there's a lot of like power in that, like people that don't know and people that can't do a certain thing, using the tool to help them ideate and them going, that's great. Let me go over here and get someone to do it right. Or
That's a good perspective. It is, yeah,
yeah.
because you're right. To the common person who has no musical ability, but they need a piece of music to suit a certain thing, like what you're talking about, but they don't have the vocabulary to explain it to an actual musician. That could be an effective tool to be like, I'm trying to communicate what I want. I had AI spit this out because I don't speak your language as a musician. So please take this and do it up right. Do it like a real musician would. I hope that more people have that level of integrity to use it that way. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a crazy world with that. I will say that I think that the more time goes on, the more you're seeing that kind of separation between AI and the human side because there's always going to be, and I'm no stranger to it. I'd love to use more drummers in the work that I do because drummers y'all are phenomenal and I'd love to be able to bring it in. A lot of the times I do end up writing in drum parts into drum machines and being able to use those for a lot of the work that I do, but I'm still composing it. Like one thing I really try to make sure that I don't do is use loops that are like musically driven. If I need an explosion sound effect, yes, I will use an explosion sound effect, but that's also like using a sitar to get a certain sound or an acoustic. But like if I had to have the sitar play something for me, I'm like, well, that's when we start to get into non-creative dicey territory in my
Yeah,
opinion.
right.
But I think that a lot of people are starting to see that even though AI is, in a lot of ways decent, there is something to having that human element, even if it's just that extra little bit. It's that little extra little bit to tell the person, hey, can you add like an extra second of silence here? And like, can you do this little thing? Because the computer doesn't get what I'm doing,
Sure.
you
It's
know?
going by broad strokes only. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's a lot. And I think there'll always be a struggle kind of with AI, especially nowadays. But I think we're doing it. I think we're to a degree we're doing it. I think if you watch Mary Spender's last video on like the modern state of music
Oh, I
industry and
haven't.
like
She does great
yeah,
videos.
she's always great and she's super transparent about everything. And I love that she has that transparency to her, but she's also talked about like, well, even though AI and Spotify and all that stuff is here, there's still a lot of hope for what we do. And I love that because it talks about like authenticity. And even in wrestling, it's like, if you're cookie cutter doing something, it's one thing, but you still got to go to a show. You still got to watch someone on TV. They still got to connect with you. And I think that what AI does show is that things can be done by robots or by code or whatever, but you're always still going to have that authenticity to what you do.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, exactly. And ultimately, all those AI models that we currently have access to are all just gathering information by scraping it off the work of actual human creativity.
yeah,
So it is ultimately all human based. All of that stuff that we consume that's AI based is ultimately taken from human experience.
exactly. One of the things that AI will never take are, again, when you have that Dead and Lovely Facebook group, which was so active and still is active
But
for you, which
yeah,
is cool.
totally. Yeah.
You guys would always be like, hey, ask us questions for the show. And my dumbass would always be the one like, hey, if you had to make a WrestleMania with a bunch of
Oh,
horror people, who would they
those were
be?
so fun, dude. Anytime we did like an FAQ thing on the show, it was always so fun. And I love those kind of questions specifically, because that's just an excuse to get creative and get stupid, man. Those are the parts of the show that I miss, honestly, like, are just the excuses to be stupid on air.
Well, you guys had such a great show too. And
Thank you.
like, at one point, I'm sure it's like, well, how many horror movies are there,
Yeah,
But it's a
man.
lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but you also had such a vibrant group of people who were in that group, just all talking about horror, talking about wrestling, talking about just like everything. And it was so super cool.
It
I'm
was
always, yeah, I still go
definitely.
back and listen to those. Hell yeah.
I
So
appreciate that,
cool.
man. And it was really fun to see that community grow as something beyond like, because the show was never just about horror movies. We always made it very clear the show is just an excuse for us to hang out and shoot the shit every week. And we had to talk about a movie later on in the show. So I always appreciated that our fans and our the Facebook group and all that reflected that, where it wasn't just people talking about horror stuff. It was everything within the entire sphere of everything we talked about on the show, which included guitar stuff and wrestling and cooking and whatever else.
Now, I'm going to ask you two questions before we're done. And one of them is very much in the vein of that, because I feel like, with how long we've known each other, with this, with Deadland, with all that stuff, it would be inappropriate for me to not throw in a question about build this. So, as we are both in that guitar ecosystem here, I asked you a while ago for the Dead and Lovely, if you had to build a WrestleMania card all about horror people,
Yeah.
who would you put in and why? If you had to build, let's say, a 3-card match, so 3 matches with guitarists, who would they be and what would be some of the matches?
Man,
That's the
that's
tough one.
brutal. Okay. All right. So first match, I want to see the Battle of the Bar. I'm talking about the Whammy Bar Masters, Jeff Beck and Steve Vai. I want to see them go bar to bar, rocking it out, see who can control that old kickstand more better. So the Battle of the Bars. I want to see a total package match. Okay, total package being guys that are equally insane riffers and shredders. So I'm thinking Dimebag Daryl versus Vogue from Decapitated, because Vogue is one of the ultimate total package players. That would be
Yes.
the underdog in that match,
And good call on Decapitated, too. I feel like
Man,
in the world of guitaring and the world of metal, Decapitated has been around for years, but
so
no matter
long.
how long they've been around for, still incredibly underrated. Oh my
Phenomenally
God.
underrated. Dude, people sleep on that band like crazy, and I don't understand why. Like, the guitar playing is bananas, yeah, but also the songs are so freaking sick, man. I love that band. And again, Vogue is a total package player. I say so Battle of the Bar, total package, and oh gosh, I got to think of a good one here. I got to think of something good to get these guys going toe to toe. Is there anybody that came to mind for you whenever you thought up this question?
I don't know. For me, there's so many great guitarists, and the thing is, like, yeah,
Sorry, I just had one. Continue,
go ahead.
please.
No, go ahead with it. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
you got it.
sorry,
Keep it up.
sorry. I want to have a freak show match. I want to have Buckethead versus John Five. Get the real theatrical guys together. Have them duke it out. I want to see the battle of the freak show players.
Oh my God, that'd be perfect too. And they both obviously have to be full garb and everything. None of the John
Exactly.
5 without the makeup, like totally like how he would play live. Absolutely. Oh my gosh,
Yep.
that'd be a good one. And now I'm thinking, I'm like, man, who would it be? I feel like it'd have to be like for World Championship, it would have to be Steve Vai versus Guthrie Govan.
Well, yeah, dude. Now we're talking.
Yeah, like it's like the A1 and the AB, like we always talk about. That's like the Stone Cold versus the Rock of guitar playing, and no disrespect to anybody else. But then you have who else? I feel like it'd just be Guthrie Govan versus everybody. The legacy guys, Guthrie Govan versus Satriani, all those. Oh, you know what you could do? You could have a really good matchup. You could have Kirk Hammett versus Joe Satriani and have that be a whole teacher to mentor kind of thing.
There's a lot of storyline right there, right? Teacher versus
Yeah,
student match. I like how that sounds a lot. You could do the same thing with Vi versus Satch as well. There,
man.
I like it. Vi's got the height advantage, man.
Oh, yeah. You know what's interesting? None of us brought up Malmsteen for anything.
I mean, who's gonna fight him? Who's gonna step into the ring with the Viking? None of us,
True.
man. Too intimidated.
You know what, though? I am going to throw this one out there, and I don't know why. And I think it's just because, again, he's just a monster of a player, but he's also ripped to the gills, even though he's older. George Lynch versus Yngwie Malmsteen. Like, that'd be one.
Or Petrucci, because Petrucci's jacked too, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
That'd be
a
like the
triple
hunk
threat.
match, right?
Oh my God, that'd be great. And you know what? I'll throw one in for our female brethren here as well, because I'm so happy, and I say this all the time with my students. I'm so happy that a lot of my students are girls now for guitar too, because I'm just like, man, I love the fact of seeing that next generation of guitarists really get into it,
Well,
and it
yeah,
not just being dudes and seeing like girls really
totally.
rock out on it. Should I put Gretchen Menon? Yes, I'm gonna put Gretchen. I'm gonna put Gretchen Menon and Ann Wilson, because that
Awesome.
one. Yeah, they're both phenomenal players. I almost feel like that one wouldn't even be like there'd be no grudge there. It would literally just be both of them. Well, here we are. Let's just shred together.
Yeah,
And then it would be
probably.
like a total like pose down kind of thing. It'd be awesome.
I love how that sounds. That's amazing, man.
Yeah. It's awesome.
But yeah, you're right, man. The explosion of female guitar players for the future is huge, man. That is a huge wave that's coming.
Yeah. And you hear so many good ones now. And I'm just like, every time you go on Instagram, every time you hear a new record come out, it's just like, man, I wish we would have had so many more of these players throughout time, just because I wish there was even so much more of a highlight, like
Well,
just
yeah.
over time. But now the internet's given that to us. So
Well, I think too that you're seeing the power of representation at work there too, because when I was a kid, if you were a girl that played guitar, I mean, we had like Lita Ford, there just weren't many, Yeah, yeah, the chicks from Heart, but it wasn't really about their playing. It was about the singing and the songs and all that. So there just wasn't that much representation. So I would imagine if you were a young female back then, it was hard to imagine yourself taking that spot because you didn't see yourself represented that way in media and in music and all that. But nowadays, I mean, I'm no Taylor Swift fan by any means, although by all accounts, a wonderful person. I've known people who've worked on her crew and she's treated her crew like gold. So I appreciate that about her. But I'm not necessarily a fan of her music. But I think just for a lot of girls out there seeing like, oh my God, this is a girl that plays guitar and she's making it. She's on the screen. There's that representation factor. Here's somebody that looks like me that's doing what I want to do and they're nailing it. Maybe that means I got a chance at it. I think we're seeing the power of representation.
I agree with that too. And because you brought up Taylor Swift, before I ask you the final question, because you brought up Taylor Swift, do you know who Taylor Swift used to babysit for? Who's in the wrestling industry?
No.
Jeff Jarrett.
What? Double J
How-
Jeff Jarrett?
Yep. A
You're
while ago, he
kidding.
posted a picture and he was like, "Oh yeah, Taylor Swift used to be our babysitter." And there's the picture of her teaching the kids music while he's just there in the
What?
background, just like, "Ain't I great?" I'm just like, "This is so cool."
And then did he like take the guitar and smash it, El Kabong him? That's all he could teach
Imagine
him.
if that's how he like, as time went on, he tried to do it, and she's like, "Not today," and that's how she started.
That's amazing. Oh my God, that's so funny, man.
Yeah, it's so cool to see that, and like, it's just so interesting to me. There's always so much music and wrestling intersects in the world, and you'll find it, you'll see it. Even hardcore music now is getting into wrestling, and it's been there for a
Big
while,
time.
but like, there's so much to it.
Yep.
Last question I'm going to ask you before you leave, and I ask all the guests before they leave. If you had to think of 3 songs to put on a Spotify or Apple playlist that represent Ben Eller, what are those 3 songs?
My God. Okay,
That's especially hard for you.
me as a player or me as a person?
You can do a list for both if you'd like.
I mean, they're kind of intertwined, really. Those two things are definitely intertwined. Let's see. I don't think that I would be playing music if not for Dookie by Green Day. Like that's honestly kind of my secret origin story. I heard Green Day whenever my brother got that CD from the pawn shop, and I'd grown up listening to Van Halen and ZZ Top and all this, really hot stuff on guitar before I even picked up the instrument. And it was like, oh, I could never do that. I could never play like that. You know what I mean? I kind of gave up before I even started. But I heard Green Day and I was like, this sounds like something I could do. I bet I could do this. Again, there's that representation thing. There's somebody who's not a guitar god and they're out here rocking and playing songs all over the world. Maybe that could be me next. So I'd maybe have like Welcome to Paradise off of Dookie. It's probably one I would have on there. I would probably have I'd have to have I'm the One by Van Halen. I mean, Van Halen has always been at the cornerstone of my being. It's like literally my oldest memories I have as a human being are of listening to Van Halen 1. Like earliest memories, period. It's that needle dropping on my parents' vinyl of Van Halen 1 and hearing Eruption and You Really Got Me and songs like that. I'm the One has always just been like that's the most badass guitar song of all time. And I would have to have some Steve Vai on there, wouldn't I? I'd have to,
I think so.
because again, that's the guy that really cemented like, well, I have to do this the rest of my life. Green Day was kind of the spark, and Steve Vai was the stick of dynamite, that really
Yeah.
blew me up. So maybe something off of Passion and Warfare, because that's the album that changed my life for sure. I don't want to say For the Love of God, because I'm not really a balladsman, although that's obviously a very important piece of music. Maybe something like probably like Erotic Nightmares. Yeah, that
Okay, yeah.
that was a song that I remember hearing on that, and it starts off with all the kind of typical guitar virtuoso stuff. It's got a sick riff, it's got whammy bar stuff and all kinds of, cool rock isms in there. And then it gets to the dream sequence part of the song. You know the tune, don't you?
Yeah, oh, totally.
It gets to the dream sequence part of the song, and it's just really abstract and weird. I don't know. It opened my eyes to what you can do with instrumental music. So I'd probably have to have that on there. Yeah, Green Day, Van Halen, and Steve Vai.
That's a great list. And because you brought up Steve Vai, I think Steve Vai would be on mine too. Because to me, Steve Vai is always just like my favorite guitarist of all
That's
time.
that's my guy, dude. That's my guy.
Yeah, everyone can come after him and before him, but for me, it's like when you think about a composer, you think about a complete package, you think about somebody who's just overly unique and everything is musical. It's him. And for me, I remember when I had first heard about Steve Vai years, and obviously when I was a kid, it's like, all right, cool. When I looked at it, I'm like, all right, whatever. Weird thing to say. But then I remember hearing Building the Church,
Oh my god,
and
dude.
building the church was life changing because like I had learned about tapping, but I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm just a rhythm player, because that's the kind of silly things we think about when we're young. And then all of a sudden I hear that and I'm like, what is this? Like, just this is cool. And then I
Yeah.
saw him doing it with his hand over the neck doing this, and I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah, dude.
This is
Man,
crazy.
and then the riffs in that song and the solo. That's one of his most well composed songs, in my opinion. Just the flow of that tune is so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. That record I think is, to me, I know a lot of people go with flexibles and they go with all that. For me, I still my favorite Steve Vai record of all time, and it might just be because that's the one that got me really into it, is Real Illusions Reflections.
I totally
The
get
second
that.
one is cool, but the first one is like, yeah, that's for me.
It's so
Cool.
good, man. I have a same kind of similar soft spot for the Ultra Zone because that came out like I'll put it to you this way. I'd gotten Passion Warfare. Whenever the Ultra Zone came out, that was the first new Steve Vai album to come out after I started playing guitar. Does that make
Okay.
sense? Did I say
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
So it was the first new Vi album that came out. So I got that, and songs on there like, yeah, the Ultra Zone, Ooh is one of my absolute favorites. Fever Dream, oh my God, easily in my top 3 Steve Vai songs. Fever Dream is the best. I have a real soft spot for that record, even though it does have some really cheesy, sounds like Disney ballads with vocals on it that I skip. Sorry, Steve, I skip those. But the instrumentals on it are so freaking good, man.
I
What else is
love
on your
that.
play? You got me thinking. What else is on your playlist?
Yeah, so I'll put Building the Church on
Yeah,
there for sure. And I promise I'm not stealing a lot of yours. It's just I think we grew up fairly
you like
simpatico on
things that are
here.
nice.
Exactly. Yes. And so Van Halen for me, I didn't get into them until I was much older, but the way I'd gotten into Ozzy was off my we went into the Walgreens one day and my dad had gotten I was like, "Oh, can I get this record?" It was a greatest hits of Ozzy. And he was like, "Yeah, totally." So I got that. And I heard Crazy Train. I'm like, "All right, I kind of knew Crazy Train. Great." I heard Bark at the Moon and I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
dude.
"What is this?"
Yeah,
Like,
man. Next
to
level.
me, yeah, and I heresy be damned, right? But for me, I will always say that Bark of the Moon is probably my favorite Ozzy song of all time.
I
It's
can't
like
argue with you.
it's
It's
so
probably mine
different.
too. Probably
I'm
mine
sorry,
too.
it's not Randy. Yeah, it's not Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads is phenomenal, but like the song is great. There's so much cool stuff in there, and like you think about the way that he played that, it was unbelievable. And
Yeah.
then in terms of a third one, okay, in terms of a third one, I'm going to go a little bit out of left field because I wouldn't be me if I didn't. It's a band called a Wilhelm Scream, and when I was in
I
college,
remember
it's
them.
yeah, they're still to this day one of my favorite bands. And up into college, I was very much, just guitar driven music and, things like that. But when I got into college, a buddy of mine, Seth, was very much into like this what we call like melodic hardcore style, and like that, Heart Sounds, those kinds of bands. And I feel like if you put a guitar in my hands, that's the style I play with instrumental vibes to it, right? And I remember hearing this song by them called The Horse, and I was like, this song is crazy. And it's got like the super tapping bass solo. The guitars are doing really cool stuff. It's like technical punk. It's like punk in different time signatures and things like that.
Hell yeah.
And it's the records that they've put out, like Mute Print and things like that, are some of my favorites. But that song changed for me. Like, it was right before I heard, probably like the same week actually, that I heard Protest the Hero. And so
Wow.
those two will always be like my 1A and 1B for like that style. Protest the Hero is a lot more dramatic and a lot more like crazy. But if you listen to like Kazaya and that kind of record, for me, it's like, okay, cool. Like it's either the horse from that or Blindfold Decide by Protest. And I'm
That's
like,
rad.
"Mm, yeah,
That's
it's a
awesome,
lot.
man. That's cool.
It's a lot of
Okay.
different
I
things."
have a question for you
Yeah.
before we
Uh
go.
oh.
Because I was
Uh oh.
thinking about this just before we got on the air, and it came to me again, it came to me so fast. I was like, that's it. That's the answer. All right. If you were a hardcore razzler, what is your finishing move and what is your, like trademark catchphrase? I'll give you a second to think about it while I'll tell you about mine. So I was thinking about this, and if I stepped into the squared circle, and it's not a character, it's Uncle Ben, it's just me, right? I think my finisher is going to be some kind of like hard ass brutal submission move, probably something old school like a Boston Crab. Also, that move sucks. If you've ever been put in a Boston Crab, it's awful. It's terrible.
And everyone would put you in it, especially if you had like brothers and sisters or cousins. They'd all put you in it.
Absolutely. Oh man, I got crabbed on the trampoline very many times in my youth. Crabbed
That
on the
needs to be a shirt. I got crabbed on the
I
trampoline.
got crabbed on the trampoline. That's totally merch, dude. That rules. That might be the name of my solo album that I'm working on this year. Crabbed on the trampoline. And so I think it's gonna be a submission move. And like as the person I'm laying this on is like struggling and writhing around in pain, I'm giving him my catchphrase. Say uncle. Say uncle. It's good. It's good.
I love how it's all on brand too. And I can imagine you looking deep down the camera going, I'm gonna make you say uncle.
I'm gonna make you say uncle. I love it. Oh my God.
I love that. So now what would mine be? I've thought about like over time and this and that. And like, I think like we all do. We put like our own characters and our own storylines in like, oh, if I was this, what would it be? For me, my finisher would be like the way that Cactus Jack used to do the pile driver called the Cactus Special.
Yeah,
Tony
dude.
Storm kind of does it the way now he did called she calls it the Storm Zero.
Is that
And it's
different than like the
basically,
double arm DD?
well, so that was what he did later on, but when as Cactus Jack, he used to not get the person like vertical like this and then put him down. He used to just like drag them down.
Yeah,
And to me, I
forgot
was
about
like,
that. Yes.
there's been 3 people I've seen do it really well: Cactus Jack, Sammy Callahan, and Tony Storm. And I'm like, that looks like it sucks.
Yeah.
That one would have to be mine. Man, catchphrases. I'm never good with catchphrases, even for like the show, even for anything. I'm never good with them. I feel like I'm gonna say something cheesy like "lights out" right now, and then all of a sudden,
so good.
like it's simple, but then I feel like I'm gonna get off the interview here, and I'm gonna be like, "This would have been so much better."
Right?
So we'll say "lights out" for now, because that's also good if you're doing a pile driver.
Totally is. Yeah,
So-
because that's gonna put him out for sure.
I like that. Yeah,
I dig it.
that's a good question. Oh my gosh,
You can use that. I just get a percentage,
the Ben tax.
That's it, man. That's it.
Well, Ben, as always, it's always awesome talking to you. I'm glad we finally got to get the time to
Me
chat
too.
here, hit the record button, and do our thing. So
I
thank
appreciate
you
the
so
patience,
much.
man. It's been a lot. Like I remember you were hitting me up earlier in the year, like before the Mastodon thing was coming, and it's like, could we wait a little while? I kind of got a lot on my plate I can't talk about, but just give me a week and you'll see what it is.
I forget who I had said that I thought it was. Like, knowing it's Mastodon, it's so just, again, you deserve it, and it's just so
Man.
cool, man.
I appreciate that very much. I had a lot of people because I had to keep tight-lipped about it there for that short period of time, and I had a lot of people that were sending me guesses, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, dude, you're going on the road with Ghost, aren't you? You're going to be a nameless ghoul, aren't you?"
That's who I thought it was. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember saying Ghost too. Yeah,
And I'm like, "How do you know I already haven't?"
that's fair.
Just saying.
That's fair.
Just
With
saying.
Ghost, you could get away with it, right?
You could. Maybe I did. I don't know.
That's like when CM Punk didn't wrestle for a while, and then afterwards he went into AEW, but people still suspect that he was on the indies under a mask every now and again. Because there was a video of him from like a VFW where he was like, where there were like 30 people there. There was just a guy in a mask, and just randomly someone was recording. Just this guy runs up, hits a GTS, a go to sleep, and everyone's just like,
Doing the math
it's not
here.
ju- yeah, it's not just it's a GTS. It's like kind of looks like the way you'd hit it, dog.
That's funny. That's awesome. I appreciate the patience very much, man. I know we've been trying to do this for a while.
Man, of course. Thank you, my friend.
You
Always
got
good
some
talking to you.
some new music of your own coming for soon?
You'll hear it. Yep. Trying to do a couple things with it. So I don't usually do a lot of videos. I'm trying to do more videos before releases. I'll tell you about something I'm working on off air too. 'cause
Ooh, I'm
that's kinda
excited
cool.
already, man. That's
So-
great, dude. Look forward to it.
Absolutely.